Garden Basics with Farmer Fred is brought to you by Smart Pots, the original lightweight, long-lasting fabric plant container. It's made in the USA. Visit smartpots.com/Fred for more information and a special discount. That's smartpots.com/Fred. Welcome to the Garden Basics with Farmer Fred podcast. If you're just a beginning gardener or you want good gardening information, well, you've come to the right spot. We've had a lot of segments on this podcast lately about roses. The best ones for long-lasting cut flowers, how to control weeds around roses, even the best tasting roses. But we haven't answered one of the most obvious rose questions until today. What are the most fragrant roses? Master Rosarian Charlotte Owendyk has a list of her top 10 favorite fragrant roses. One question that has reappeared year after year here may seem rather surprising, but it is a problem for some gardeners, tripping while walking on the lawn because it's lumpy. America's favorite retired college horticulture professor, Debbie Flower, has some cures for that lumpy lawn. We're podcasting from Barking Dog Studios here in the beautiful Abutilon Jungle in Suburban Purgatory. It's the Garden Basics with Farmer Fred podcast, brought to you today by Smart Pots. And we'll do it all in under 30 minutes. Let's go. You may have heard on the podcast Debbie Arrington talking about the tastiest roses, the roses to munch on. And she mentioned something very interesting, that the tastiest roses also were the roses that had the best fragrance. So what are the most fragrant roses? Let's talk with another Master Rosarian, Charlotte Owendyk of the Sierra Foothills Rose Society. Charlotte, you have, over 300 roses in your yard, right?
That's correct.
So I imagine that you've got some fragrant favorites.
The ones that most people, when I talk about, they ask me about what are good fragrant roses. They always ask and mention Mr. Lincoln and Double Delight. And these are roses that were hybridized in the late 60s, early 70s, because I bought Double Delight the year it came out. So let's not talk about my age then. Okay. Anyway, they are lovely roses, but I don't have them in my yard.
And why is that?
Yeah, why is that? Because they're not as disease resistant as some of the newer roses that came down the pike. At the time these roses were bred, they were going for scent, and people were spraying their roses then too. So they didn't have to worry about mildew and black spot and all those things. So the roses were not as strong and sturdy. The newer roses that they have produced now, they're much stronger and they're more disease resistant than the older roses. Believe it or not, disease resistance and fragrance are actually linked somehow in the genetic makeup of a rose. So first, they couldn't get both those two things. They had to go for one of them. And so they went for disease resistance first. And then once they got some disease resistant, they started incorporating more fragrance. So you'll see more and more of the newer roses are fragrant, which is really, really nice. And so I'm going to talk about some of my favorite ones. My absolute favorite, I'm going to start off with that one first, is Secret. And I've mentioned this before, and you've heard me talk about it. It produces beautiful, it's a bicolor rose. It has pink around the edging and kind of a creamy, the center of the petal is creamy white. And it will actually turn darker pink, just like a little bit like Double Delight does. And so it changes. And if you bring it inside, it gets lighter because it doesn't have the sun bringing the color out. It's got a fragrant, strong, spicy scent to it. It's a very vigorous bush. The bush grows really strong. It puts out a lot of blooms, and it's usually a one bloom per stem. Occasionally you get a spray, which is two or more buds on one stem. And they're great cutting roses, so it's lovely to bring that inside, and it'll scent the entire room. So you can tell I'm in love with this rose. But
we should mention that's a hybrid tea rose.
Most of these roses are hybrid teas, and thank you for that. Very few of the ones that I'm mentioning. Some are shrub roses, one or two that maybe, I think I'm going to mention Julia Child. She's a floribunda. So, and they could be a grandiflora, but grandiflora is like a hybrid tea, only they throw out more cluster blooms. Instead of one rose per cane, and they'll have 2 or 3 per cane. So that's the difference between a grandiflora and a hybrid, guys.
Are you going to mention Julia Child?
Oh, I can.
Okay.
I can. It's not my second most favorite. I guess it could be because I love the color. Yeah. Can I tell my favorite story about Julia Child and how it got its name?
Be my guest.
Yeah, okay. Julia Child did not want a rose named after her, but Weeks Roses at the time said, well, why don't you come and take a look at all the roses in our growing fields? So she drove over to down near Bakersfield, where they had the growing fields, because she lived in Santa Barbara at the time. And she walked and she pointed to some roses in the distance, says, that one.
Just like that.
Just like that. Tom Caruth, who was the hybridizer of this particular rose, is very proud of this story. That's who I got the story from. And she liked it because it was the color of butter. Everybody who's cooked with Julia Child recipes knows she loves butter. So that's why she picked that particular one. And it has a myrrh fragrance. To some people, it smells like anise or a type of licorice scent. Some people smell it very well and some people don't. But it's a beautiful bloom, and it's just a rich, buttery yellow. And it's very, very disease resistant. The blooms will fade a little bit as they get older, but who cares when you got a really gorgeous bloom? I have one bush, which is the very first one I got, and then I have 6 tree roses, and the whole bush is butter yellow. So people, when they see my yard, they know the Rosarian lives there, because they see those bushes. But anyway, my next favorite rose, and this one is an excellent rose. It's called Memorial Day. It also was hybridized by Tom Caruth. He was a excellent hybridizer. These are kind of roughly orchid pink hybrid tea roses that the blooms are about 5 to 6 inches across. They're just stunning. And my bush right now, it looks like a big bouquet. I have at least 25 to 30 buds on that particular bush as we speak, because I just looked out the window. It is a super strong, classic old rose fragrance. So that a lot of people like that old rose kind of a fragrance. So it's almost nearly thornless too. So that's another reason a lot of people like this particular rose.
It's a pink rose.
It's a pink rose, and sometimes it has a pinkish orchid, kind of purplish, pinkish purple, kind of lavender, pinkish lavender, I guess I would say. So it's absolutely lovely. All these 3 roses, all the roses I'm talking about, are very, very disease resistant. None of them have had black spot or powdery mildew on them as we speak.
Do the roses you mentioned have a wide planting area? Can other parts of the country, other USDA zones besides us here in USDA Zone 9, have success with these?
Yes, most of them. There are some people who live in the really colder areas, and their nurseries that they would go to would not stock any rose that won't survive their colder areas. And in some of the colder areas, people will bury their roses in winter and such like that. So I would check with your local rose society. I'm thinking if you're in 2, 3, 4, maybe 5, that's getting a little touchy. Secret, for example, is frost tender. So that one is, you need to stay in a warmer area or you need to protect it as a rose.
All right. So we have in your list of disease-resistant fragrant roses, we've got Secret, Julia Child, and Memorial Day. I bet there's more.
Oh, I think I can add a few more. How about a red rose? How about Firefighter? Ooh. That's a dusky red velvet hybrid tea, and it has an intense old rose fragrance. It was named after the firefighters who lost their lives on 9/11. So it's a remembrance type rose, but it's an excellent cut flower. It's almost always one bloom per stem, and it's very vigorous and it likes to bloom. That's a taller rose. It's a little bit taller than some of the other ones. Another one I really like. This is for that blush kind of a bridal pink. It's called Francis Milan. And this rose has amazing, sweet, strong fruit and citrus. I like roses that are kind of fruity in fragrance. Damask and fruit. That's my favorite. And this one, it's beautiful. It has the center of the rose is kind of pinkish, and then it unfurls and it becomes ivory white. And it's just gorgeous and a great cut flower. So
is that a fairly new entry?
Yeah, that one, that was about maybe within the last 10 years. Okay. All of these are within the last 10, 15 years.
You know, going back to something we were talking about originally about the old roses that had a good fragrance, but they were susceptible to diseases. You mentioned Mr. Lincoln and Double Delight. Probably Fragrant Cloud would be in that mix as well.
That's true. It's also in that category. I didn't put that in this article, but I made a note to mention Fragrant Cloud because when it came out, I remember walking down the neighborhood and somebody had planted it. And naturally, you walk through a rose, it catches your eye because it has a great eye color, and it really stood out in that particular garden. And I put my nose in and go, whoa, that's really smelly.
Said the woman who says her nose doesn't work. Yeah.
Well, some days are better than other days, depending if I take an allergy pill or not.
All right. Let's see if we can round up 5 more so we have a nice...
Oh, you want 5 more?
If you've got 5 more, yeah. So that way we have a top 10 of Charlotte's favorite fragrant roses.
I'm going to give you one, a white rose. It is a beautiful white rose. It was one of the best performers this last summer. It kept on pumping out the blooms no matter how hot it was. And that was the same thing for Memorial Day. Pope John Paul and Memorial Day were some of my best performers in my garden. And we were talking anywhere from 80 to over 100-degree heat, depending on the day. So I want to say that it's a clear white blooms, and it has a lot of petals because there's about 45 petals in this one, but it has a strong citrus fragrance. And it's a stunning disease-resistant bush. It has beautiful dark green, glossy foliage. Whenever I see leaves that are very glossy, I know they're going to most likely be very disease-resistant because they have a waxy covering. And like the spores from the fungus and from the powdery mildew kind of roll off. They have a harder time getting through that glossy, waxy covering. So that I know when I see a rose bush with a waxy cover, I go, oh, this one's probably going to be good and disease resistant. So it's my number 3 fragrant rose.
Oh, Pope John Paul II.
Yes, I actually have 2 of them. And I wasn't going to get another one. And then I was walking through a nursery and they're in a pot. And it was just sitting there all by itself with a couple other roses. And it was near the end of the season. So it's August. And it had at least 10 to 15 white blooms on this pot. I said, that is such a good bush. I'm going to take you home with me. So I do pick up stray cats and dogs.
Okay. All right. All right. How about some more?
That's why you like talking to me, because I can make you laugh. Okay. Princess Alexandria of Kent. There's a whole group of roses that they call English roses or Austin roses. And David Austin was a hybridizer out of England, and he loved old garden roses because he liked the shape of the bloom. There's hundreds of petals usually, and a lot of them are very, very fragrant. But many of them, they didn't bloom that frequently, or they only bloom once a year. They only, they'd have the spring bloom and then they'd stop, or they have intermittent blooms the rest of the year. So he crossed hybrid tea and the newer modern roses, which bloom all the time. They're called recurrent. And they've got he came up with some beautiful roses. And one of the ones I absolutely love is Princess Alexandria of Kent. They're very large, bright pink flowers that are cupped, and they don't hang down. They look up at you because the stem holding them up is is very good. And it's a very rounded shrub. It's about 4 feet by 4 feet in my garden. And it has a fresh tea fragrance that matures with a little bit of lemon and hint of blackberries. And it handles our heat really well. So that's a lovely one. I really like that one. Let's see. How about, I'm going to give you Golden Celebration. I've had this one for a very long time. And I like it because it's that golden yellow color. It's not quite the same color. It's a richer color than Julia Child. And it's a bigger bush, but it has a beautiful fragrance. And I can pick it and bring it in. The whole house smells, not just a room. And it has strong tea, kind of a wine, Sauterne wine and strawberry fragrance. It's just beautiful. And it's a stunning rose. Now, sometimes when you have a very fragrant rose, it doesn't necessarily always last that long. And this one doesn't last that long. Every one that I mentioned earlier are all good cut flowers. But this one, it'll last 3 or 4 days, where the other one will 5 or 6 days.
And it's a deep yellow color, right?
Yep. It's just a golden yellow. Yeah. It's absolutely gorgeous. Beverly is another really nice one. It's a really bright, intense pink. It's more of a pink. It's a deep pink, and it has more of a ruffled kind of look. And the fragrance in that, it has citrus. I love it how these peach, pear, and plum. It has, and a couple other undernotes, but you're going to have to figure that out with your own nose. And and it's a beautiful rose. Instead of having a kind of a pointy tip to it, it opens up flat. So it's pretty in arrangement, and that's a lovely one. Another one, and I always love this one.
This will be your last one. Are you sure you want to make this one your last one?
Well, yeah. Well, I'm going to make this one. It's called Falling in Love.
Okay.
Because if you plant this, you're going to love all kinds of roses. No, no. The reason I don't know why the marketers came up with this one, but when we saw this rose, we just chuckled. It's a beautiful pink rose. It can last up to 7 days as a cut rose. And it has the perfect spiral shape, and it's super fragrant. But when you cut it and you look at the stems, it is very thorny.
Oh, my. Well, still, be careful.
It has everything. Except the big prickles. But they're farther apart.
Master Rosarian Charlotte Owendyk's top 10 fragrant roses: Secret, Julia Child, Memorial Day, Firefighter, Francis Milan, Pope John Paul II, Princess Alexandria of Kent, Golden Celebration, Beverly, and Falling in Love. Serve them in a salad soon.
At your nearest botanical restaurant.
Why not? Charlotte Owendyk is with the Sierra Foothills Rose Society. Some great fragrant roses there. Thank you for your efforts in this behalf, Charlotte.
It's been a pleasure, and I love talking with you, Fred.
Oh, we have fun.
Yes, we do.
All right. Thank you, Charlotte.
Okay. Bye-bye.
All right. I'm pretty picky about who I allow to advertise on this podcast. My criteria, though, is pretty simple. It has to be a product I like, a product I use, and a product I would buy again. And you know who checks all those boxes? It's Smart Pots. Smart Pots is the oldest and still the best of all the fabric plant containers that you might find. Smart Pots are sold around the world, and they're proudly made 100% right here in the USA. Smart Pots come in a wide array of sizes and colors and can be reused year after year. Some models even have handles, and that makes them a lot easier to move around the yard. Because the fabric breathes, Smart Pots are better suited than plastic pots, especially for hot climates. That breathable fabric has other benefits too. Water drainage issues? Not with Smart Pots. Roots that go round and round choking the root ball like they do in plastic pots? Doesn't happen with Smart Pots. These benefits will help you get a bigger, better plant than what you've gotten in the past with the same size plastic or other hard container. Smart Pots are available at independent garden centers as well as select Ace and True Value hardware stores nationwide. To find a store near you or to buy online, visit smartpots.com/Fred. And don't forget that /Fred part. On that page are details about how, for a limited time, you can get 10% off your Smart Pot order by using the coupon code FRED, F-R-E-D. Use it at checkout from the Smart Pot store. Visit smartpots.com/Fred for more information about the complete line of Smart Pot's lightweight, colorful, award-winning fabric containers. And don't forget that special Farmer Fred 10% discount. Smart Pots, the original award-winning fabric planter. Go to smartpots.com/Fred. We like to answer your garden questions here on the Garden Basics program. For that, we bring in the big gun. Retired college horticultural professor Debbie Flower is with us. A lot of ways you can get your question into us. You can pick up a telephone and call us, 916-292-8964. 916-292-8964. Please, no matter how you contact us, do tell us where you are. That helps us better answer your garden question. SpeakPipe, speakpipe.com. You can just leave a message there. You don't need a telephone. You can just yell at your computer when you go to speakpipe.com/gardenbasics. That works. It's really easy. And let's see what else. Well, you can send an email to fred@farmerfred.com. You can leave a message at the Get Growing with Farmer Fred Facebook page, Farmer Fred on Twitter, or Farmer Fred Hoffman on Instagram. The choice is yours. So, Debbie, we have a lawn question coming up here. You ready?
I am.
All right.
How can I get an old lawn leveled? It's full of bumps and hard for old people to walk on. Appreciate your answer. Thank you.
That, by the way, was Shirley with the bumpy lawn. What we don't know is the source of those bumps.
Right.
If it is worm mounds, that's pretty easy. Take a rake to them.
Right. And night crawlers, if you've got a fisher person in your house, you might go out and collect night crawlers. They will, in particular, cause they're a worm-like object. I don't know if they're technically classified as a worm, and they are notorious for making lumps in lawns. It could just be the type of grass she has. If it's a total fescue lawn, then that's a clumping grass. Where the clump is the high spot, and the low spot between is where there's no grass growing. It looks green all the way across because the blades have fallen over and filled in the empty spots. It could be tree roots. That would be the most difficult one to address because you could harm the tree by harming the roots. Other than that, I can't think of reasons. Do you have any other reasons?
The only thing I could think of, maybe they're gopher mounds or mole mounds. But again, you could you could rake the soil smooth in that regard.
Right.
Let's go back to the idea that it might be a clumping lawn issue, that the variety of lawn may be such that they're kind of a stiff lawn that forms in clumps. There are some fescues like that. I think zoysia is like that as well. Mm-hmm. That would almost take probably aeration and overseeding.
Overseeding with something that is a running grass, not a clumping grass. She says it's an old lawn, so my guess is it's not due to the clumping grass because people, when you mow a fescue, it causes it to do what's called tillering, or making that clump bigger and bigger and bigger. And if that happens over many years, then eventually there are blades of grass almost everywhere. So I would probably not choose that as my number one suspicion. Worms are what came, or night crawlers are what came to mind first for me. Tree roots, that would be unfortunate. My thought is pick a path. Want to get, let's say, from the driveway to the front door or whatever, and have that potentially tilled, leveled, and maybe make it into a path with decomposed granite or some kind of very fine gravel, or if you can go all the way and have it paved.
Or stepping stones even.
Yes, I did that in a lawn. My last house, which was a fescue bluegrass mix, which is very common around here. And then Bermuda grass, of course, moves in. And I just took large flagstones and laid them right in the grass. I didn't prep it at all. I didn't till it at all. I just laid these large stones right in the grass, and it worked. I could mow right over it, and I could walk on the stones easily.
What size were these stones?
Probably 18 inches by 18 inches.
Okay.
Something I could handle.
Right. Well, that, and it's wide enough for you to walk on or move a wheelbarrow over, too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
And they met each other. They were adjoining, so it wasn't like it went ka-thunk, ka-thunk if you were rolling a wheelbarrow.
Right. You would need them right close to each other. Yes.
Right. That may be the answer. Now, if it is tree roots, well, obviously, rototiller is going to have issues with that. And I have seen tree roots that have surfaced around trees and even shrubs that if you're walking nearby, they could be considered lumpy. And that might be an issue where you do want to do the stepping stones away from them.
Yes. The tree roots are at the surface for a reason. It's typically due to light, frequent watering, and the roots need to grow where there's oxygen and water. If you water, let's say, daily for 15 minutes or something, then the water's only going to be in the top of the soil surface, and the tree roots therefore have to grow there. That can't be changed now. The roots that are there are not going to be moved. You could possibly, and I am not an arborist, so take this with a grain of salt. You could possibly put sand over them, something that drains extremely well, allows oxygen in, and allows the water in, if you needed to level to get past one with a pathway, let's say.
The one issue I have with either a sand walkway or a decomposed granite walkway was a problem that I came up with when we lived at our old place and we put in some decomposed granite walkways. Gophers really like them.
Oh, really?
And you don't know that there is a gopher burrow there until you step on it when it's wet and it collapses under your foot.
Okay.
So that's, if you have gophers, I would kind of sway you away from DG or sand in that regard.
Okay. I didn't know that gophers liked them. I guess it's easy to dig.
Yeah, it's easy to dig. And if they're trying to get from point A to point B and it's in the way, they'll just go through it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's there. So there's that. All right. So, yeah, I'm hoping for your sake, Shirley, I hope it's just worm mounds that you can just rake and smooth out. That would be the easy solution.
Right. Sounds like you're going to need a grandson or some labor, some strong arms to help you fix this problem.
And by the way, if you suspect it is tree roots, call in a consulting arborist to give you some ideas about what to do and what would be safe and what wouldn't be safe. And you can find an arborist near you, in fact, specifically a consulting arborist near you, by visiting the International Society of Arboriculture website, treesaregood.org. You can just put in your zip code and up will pop a list of arborists and consulting arborists who can then be checked out and hired if you wish. So that is one idea for you there, Shirley. Thanks so much for the question. And Debbie Flower, thanks for helping out and answering listener questions here on Garden Basics.
You're welcome, Fred.
We've talked on the Garden Basics podcast back in episode 114, as well as in the Farmer Fred Rant blog page, about the benefits of crop rotation. And it's something that isn't just for farmers. It's for backyard and front yard food gardens as well. Your garden can be improved by not planting the same vegetables in the same spot year after year. In Friday's Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter, we get graphic about how to rotate your crops in a particular order for maximum benefits for your crops and your soil. The graphic part, by the way, kind of resembles a bicycle wheel, or a pizza garden, if you will. You'll want to save the step-by-step diagrams to guide you along on your pursuit to better vegetable production as well as increased soil fertility. It's in the newsletter that goes beyond the basics, the Garden Basics with Farmer Fred Beyond the Basics newsletter. It's out Friday, June 3rd. Find it via the link in today's show notes or visit our new website, gardenbasics.net. And there you can find a link to the newsletter in one of the tabs on the top of the page. And you can listen to any of our previous editions of the podcast. And you can even read an enhanced transcript of the podcast episode that you're listening to now. It's at gardenbasics.net, where you can also link to the Garden Basics newsletter Beyond the Basics. And it's free. Look for it on Friday, June the 3rd. So take a deeper dive into gardening with the Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter. Find it at gardenbasics.net. And thanks for listening. Oh, and thanks for reading, too. Garden Basics with Farmer Fred comes out every Tuesday and Friday, and it's brought to you by Smart Pots and Dave Wilson Nursery. Garden Basics, it's available wherever podcasts are handed out. For more information about the podcast, visit our website, gardenbasics.net, and that's where you can find out about the free Garden Basics newsletter, Beyond the Basics. And thank you so much for listening.